Welcome into the Lucas podcast. The dust has settled from Mike Vrabel being hired as some sort of position on the Cleveland Browns coaching staff. So therefore, we can resume the show. Mike,
Yes.
we have a major story out of Major League Baseball. Shohei Ohtani is involved in a major gambling controversy involving his now former interpreter, Ippei Mizuhara. And I have a little spiel I like to go on, and then I can give you the floor about this situation. I can give a little outline exactly what's going on here, and then we can discuss the situation. So there was a story from ESPN's Tisha Thompson breaking the story that Dodgers are firing him, and a spokesperson for Ohtani initially said that Ohtani transferred the funds to cover Mizuhara's gambling debt. And then once that became public, Ohtani's game was like, no, that's not what happened. And he has been involved in a massive theft. So we'll just start there. So we can get into everything that happened after that. But from my vantage point, Mike, this clearly screams a situation where something was said that Ohtani's camp didn't like, and they tried to spin it another way. And when I hear that, I immediately just think, all right, you're just trying to spin this to cover yourself, and therefore likely guilty.
I don't know if I've thought about a sports situation in my lifetime more than I've kind of thought about what to believe and what not to believe than this. Because on the one hand, I agree with what you just said. For them to retract a statement, and not just a statement, but a 90-minute interview, he gave a ton of information to Tisha Thompson to ESPN, to retract all of that and turn it on its head to, or from Shohei was helping me out to this guy stole $4.5 million. Yeah, that's fishy, because why would that guy offer any kind of information up like that in the first place if he knew he was guilty of stealing $4.5 million? But then there's all the other circumstances and things tied to it where I really don't know what I actually believe happened. I really don't. And I don't know
I
if I'm
I, I believe that Mizuhara was in gambling debt. Yes, Ohtani to help him. Ohtani was like, yeah, sure, I'll help you, with not knowing the ramifications of what he was getting himself involved with. And then once, Ohtani's PR people, whatever, his crisis team got a hold of what was actually going on, they were like, no, we have to spin this way, claim massive theft. And therefore, and not only that, we're going to leak these stories about how Mizuhara claimed he graduated from UC Riverside 2007
never
when the
did.
school has no record of him being there. They're going to leak a story about him previously being employed by the Red Sox when the Red Sox have no record of him working for them. So everything that's happened since then is this what's essentially happening here, Mike? And granted, I don't know like the actual truth, but based from my vantage point is there seems to be a massive hit campaign against Mizuhara from Otani's camp to make him the least credible, just the most,
Yeah, but all
evil.
that stuff makes sense. And if you were in Shohei's camp, that's what you would do. You would make this guy seem as big of a liar as humanly possible. Is it possible? Like, do I think it's plausible that this guy had racked up that much debt and Shohei was being a good friend and paying it off? Yeah, I do think that's possible. I do. I can see that being the scenario. I could also see a situation where Ippei was taking advantage and using some collateral by being so close to Shohei, where he pushed the limits too far. I feel bad taking a stand on either side, and I know that defeats the whole purpose of a sports podcast. And like, I, it's seen from every interaction you'd ever seen between those two, including that morning in the dugout, that they were legitimate friends. Like, part of Ippei's job was not just to be a translator, but he was kind of incorporated into everything Shohei did off the field. He was essentially a built-in best friend, and it wasn't the guy who manages money. It also sounds, I read a report that Shohei's mom had managed his money for the first like 27 years of his life. So it's not like this guy had ironclad finances throughout. So do I think that there's probably some truth to Ippei? Like, I don't think Shohei bet on baseball. Like, I don't think this was Shohei gambling himself. I don't know why I feel pretty confident in that, but I just don't feel like, and I don't get the sense that this was Shohei covering up for himself. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle of there was some gambling debt by Ippei. Shohei was trying to pay it off. Did he know he was $4.5 million in debt? Like, maybe not. And that's maybe where Ippei was crossing the line and going too far in this, and having any sort of tie back to Ohtani was obviously a threshold that couldn't be crossed. And then the Dodgers and Ohtani's camp and Major League Baseball take a stand and find someone as the scapegoat. And in this case, they're going to bring Ippei and trash him and drag him through the mud as much as possible. But I don't think one person specifically is 100% at blame here. I feel like a lot of people kind of played into the situation that we're at now. And I'm very curious to see what the actual truth is when it comes out.
Well, there's got to be a million investigations that goes there, and who knows when that'll actually happen. It could be a year from now, it could be 5 years from now. Like, I feel like it's going to take a long time. But like, the reason why I sort of spin this is like, listen, I don't know the hard to say exactly what Ohtani did wrong here, or if he did do anything wrong. But when you just based on everything that's happened, Mike, like with the retracting of the original statement when Ohtani's camp was like, hey, he was covering for Mizuhara's debt, to holding the press conference on Monday and not opting to take a single question. Because if someone is truly innocent, Mike, you have nothing to hide, answer every single question and put it to bed. If you were truly innocent, then answer every single question. Because when you did what Ohtani did, hold that, news conference, press conference, whatever you want to call it, why aren't you answering every single question? Like, if you have nothing to hide and you're truly innocent, then what's the harm of answering every single question that a reporter has to ask? So it just seems like, based on the fact that the initial statement, not answering questions, this spin being, in my opinion, led by Ohtani's camp of making Mizuhara as like the shadiest, like most untrustworthy human being on the face of the earth, it just seems like it's all of a cover-up to make Ohtani as some sort of victim in this situation, which I just don't think is true at all. And if you believe that he is truly like a victim here and clearly did nothing wrong, then like get your head out of your ass, Mike. Clearly,
listen, I didn't say he did nothing wrong. That's what I'm saying. I think a lot of people deserve blame here. Like, I don't think Ohtani was the one betting on games, but even to be just a guy who's bankrolling, a degenerate gambler to such an extent, there's issues with that. And to the bigger point of, I don't want to take a stand either way because I don't feel comfortable with the information we have yet. So let me ask this to break this to the most bottom line barrier. Do you think there was any theft involved whatsoever? Just yes or no? Just yes or no theft? Yes.
My gut says no.
So no theft. So you think this was?
I think Ohtani realized. I think Mizuhara was like, "Hey, Shohei, like I'm in a real bind here. I need $4.5 million, like bad. Like I'm in a rough spot. Can you please help me out?" Shohei's like, "All right, you've been a good friend to me. I just signed a $700 million contract." Like,
so then what did Shohei do wrong then? Tell me what Shohei did wrong. If that's the situation, what did Shohei do wrong?
The issue is that and that money went to an illegal bookmaking operation in California.
Yes.
That's the issue.
So, but you just said, that's what you think happened. And if that's what happened, you said saying Shohei's without blame is illogical. What did Shohei do wrong in that situation?
He gave $4.5 million to an illegal bookmaking operation. There's also other questions about like where was Ippei true? Is it all Ippei's debt? And was it he the one that, was actually gambling, or was Ohtani's camp just using him as a scapegoat? Like, I can't tell you for certain that Ohtani is not the one actually making these bets, and he's just using Mizuhara as his, fall guy.
That's why I want to see more information before I make like a declarative, he's right, he's wrong, this should be the punishment.
But but there's no doubt in my mind that Ohtani was funneled $4.5 million to this illegal bookmaking operation. Whether he did it just to cover Mizuhara, I thought he was doing what a friend does, or actually had his own gambling debt that he needed to pay off. Those are two separate questions. But I truly believe Ohtani was the one who funneled that $4.5 million to the illegal bookmaking operation. Why he did it, who he was covering for, those are the questions that we need to answer.
Yeah, and if he was covering for Ippei, I mean, maybe he didn't know it was an illegal bookmaker. Like that's what I'm saying. If what you think played out,
how naive can he be? How naive can you be?
Listen, I think he speaks better English than he gives on, but there's clearly some sort of language barrier. I don't think he's fully immersed in American culture. This is a guy who has been married to one of the most successful, or just got married to one of the most successful basketball players in the country.
By the way,
didn't say anything about it. The dude's clearly a unique character. Like, I don't know Shohei enough to make like a determination on his character because I don't know who the dude is. He wouldn't even tell us his dog's name. Like, how anyone thinks they know Shohei based on what he said to the media through a translator. Like, I don't know. That's just why I have such a hard time making a determination on this case, because I'm doing it off someone blind. I don't know anything about these guys.
if I'm being put like the whole wife thing really came out of nowhere. It was like literally when they got to South Korea, and they're like, oh, by the way, Shohei's married. Here's his wife, like out of
Yeah,
nowhere.
that's what I'm saying. So there's clearly some like oddities to Shohei, and not necessarily a bad thing. We're all unique people. Like there's nothing wrong with keeping your private life private and your public life public. But this could be a bad example. But if Draymond Green, no, that's not. What if Draymond Green gets suspended from the NBA for punching somebody? You're like, you kind of feel a certain type of way about Draymond because of his past history. If the exact same situation happened to Tim Duncan when he was in the league, you feel a little different because you know who Tim Duncan's been for 20 years. I have no freaking clue who Shohei is. I don't. Like maybe some people do in LA because they see him on a night-to-night basis, but I've never heard his actual voice before this press conference. He's always speaking through a translator. The ESPN has
any Japanese person.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know anything about the guy. So for me to be like, well, he has a sketchy background. Yeah, maybe he might be a scumbag, or hey, he's got a stellar, pristine background. Like the dude had a secret wife. Like the dude had a secret. Like I'm not gonna pretend to know anything about this guy to make any predetermined judgment on whether or not he could be a degenerate gambler, whether he's a great friend and is literally just paying his friend's debt. And if that's the case, well, know who you're paying more. But, am I going to tear someone down for being a good, like, I just don't know enough about Shohei to make any type of decision on who's right or who's wrong here until I have a little more clarity on what actually transpired.
And then you had Dave Roberts come out and be like, oh, it's so much, we're happy Mizuhara is gone because now we have a cleaner line of communication directly to Shohei. It's like, everything that they're doing since this came out is just discrediting everything Ippei Mizuhara did and how terrible of a human being he was, how not credible he was, and all those.
They have to. That's the PR move you have to take.
And I can't get. I cannot get over the fact that the initial. And I'll never get over this. The initial statement said that Ohtani's spokesperson said that he gave Mizuhara the $4.5 million to cover the gambling debt.
Well, isn't that what Ippei said?
Yeah, that's what. But That's what Ohtani's spokesperson said. That's what the story said.
I thought Ippei did the interview.
The story in Tisha Thompson's story and that she wrote said a spokesman for Ohtani, maybe in response to the initial story before the PR team got involved, said that he was covering Mizuhara's gambling debt.
I thought that was what Ippei said to Tisha, was he was covering my debt. And that's when the spokesperson team came out and said, disavow everything Ippei said. We were robbed.
So initially, here's what the story says. Initially, a spokesman for Ohtani told ESPN the slugger had transferred the funds to cover Mizuhara's gambling debt. And then after the story was published, the spokesman disavowed that statement and issued a separate statement claiming theft. This is what the story says.
Okay.
So the spokesperson for Ohtani made the statement and was like, and then once they saw the story come out, they're like, oh my God, like we have to retract this. We can't spin it like this. So that's why my ears have been perked about the situation the whole time. It's just a fishy thing going on.
It's weird.
Anyway.
No, it's definitely weird.
And we'll see how Ohtani responds here. It's Major League Baseball opening day on a wet, rainy, cold Thursday afternoon, which does not feel like opening day at all. Opening day is supposed to be like the beginning of like.
It sucks. This
good weather.
The Guardians play at 10:10 tonight. You should never have an East Coast team open the season on the West Coast for a night game. It makes no sense. The Yankees, Garrett Cole's on the injured list right now. Frank, I don't know how you feel about the Yankees, but like that pitching rotation is an abomination.
The fact that they didn't do anything after Cole went down, like the Yankees have a nice rotation of guys who can pitch 4 to 5 innings on every day, which is great. But like the bullpen's going to get so overworked, and it's going to be up to the offense to carry the load here because the bullpen's going to get worn out because like Nestor and Rodon and Stroman, like Clark Schmidt, like these are like nice pitchers, but I just feel like they don't have enough guys who can go out there and shove when any given day you can trust to go 7-8 innings. It's going to be 4. If you get 5 innings out of these guys, it's going to be a blessing. And then you have to cover 4 innings per game out of the bullpen. These guys are going to be they're all going to need Tommy John surgery by May. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm not excited. Not excited.
Yeah, we'll see. As for starting on the West Coast, you just seem like you're upset that you have to stay up and watch the Guardians tonight and not go to
I'm
bed,
not staying
right?
up. I'll
Oh,
be
you're
in.
not staying up.
I got a 6 a.m. flight tomorrow. I'll be in bed.
Okay. So there was a story floating around from Shams and whatnot that Sean Marks turned down a trade offer of Jalen Green and multiple first round picks for Mikal Bridges. Are you shaking your head as you don't believe the report, or are you shaking your head? Why didn't Sean Marks do this?
I refuse to believe that report is true, because if it is true and Sean Marks said no, he needs a mental examination ASAP. Frank, that would have been the get out of jail of all get out of jail free cards. You would have got Jalen Green back, who, by the way, is playing out of his mind the last 10 games. You would have recouped all those first round picks that you had lost. The Nets are in purgatory right now. They're not bad enough to be terrible. They're not good enough to be competent. They are stuck in that 6 to 10 limbo range in the lottery. They don't have their own picks, so there's no incentive to be terrible. They also don't have the assets to go get legitimate players, so they're going to be just average. Mikal Bridges is a really good 3. He's an okay 2 with the right 1, but he certainly is not a 1. The Nets don't have a 1 at the moment. They don't even have a head coach you feel confident in moving forward. This team has no direction whatsoever. And if Mikal Bridges is your best player, the ceiling for your team is a play-in. The absolute ceiling for your team is a play-in. And if you weren't willing to get rid of a player who was very good, Mikal Bridges is a good player on a great contract. If you weren't able to part ways with a guy whose ceiling as a number 1 is the play-in for 3 or 4 first-round picks and a young talent in Jalen Green that you could have evaluated, I have so many questions as to what the hell your plan is for the future of this franchise.
Well, so I don't necessarily believe that the report is false, but I do question whether, like, which first round picks are being involved. Are we talking about first round picks, that the Nets lost to the Rockets? Are they willing to give those up? Are they talking about first round picks, in 2035? Like, when are these first round picks happening? Because I'm sort of in the camp with you where if this was a situation where the Rockets were like, hey, listen, that Harden trade, like all the swaps, all the picks that you gave up in that trade, you have him back. We'll give you Jalen Green, who is better than Mikal Bridges. Unquestionably.
No, he's not. He's not.
You don't think he's better than McGee?
I mean, he could be better. Right now, he's not better. No. He's had a great 10-game stretch, but his whole season, he's not better than Mikal Bridges.
You don't believe that? I watched the entire game. I watched the entire Rockets Thunder game last night.
He's playing great right now, Frank, but like he plays no defense, which Bridges is phenomenal at. That's his best asset. And B, he is a scoring guy who doesn't do a ton else. He has potential. He should be way better. He has the ceiling that's much higher than Mikal Bridges. Today, he's not better, but it's not that far of a gap, Frank.
Or can you argue that he has a higher ceiling than Mikal Bridges?
I just did. I'm not going to argue because he does. That's an unquestioned fact. Yes.
So the whole notion of the Rockets, like, not only are we giving you Jalen Green, we're also giving you a mea culpa on a Harden trade is just ludicrous. It's horrible general managing by the Rockets. So that's where I have a hard time believing that is actually true. I do believe that they may have offered Jalen Green for Mikal Bridges and maybe a first round pick or two in the 2030s or later in the decade. But I just can't imagine that the Rockets would be that dumb and that ignorant to give the Nets everything back and give them a mea culpa. I just can't believe that's true.
The only reason I could see Houston potentially offering that is what we see from Jalen Green now was not the Jalen Green being discussed when this trade was being rumored at the deadline. He has taken his game. If you go to his game logs, Frank, over the last, they're on a 10-game win streak.
He's averaging like 30 a game over the past 10 or whatever.
He's been phenomenal, but that is not the player who was being discussed in these trade discussions when this initial report allegedly happened. 2, the Rockets with Fred VanVleet on the roster before Sengun got hurt, with Dylan Brooks, with Udoka, like, you had Bridges in there, and they go from kind of a frisky team that can't figure out their closing 5. Like, Jalen Green wasn't in their crunch time 5 for most of the season. His recent surge has put him in there. For them to swap, we actually might be pretty good, and might be pretty good next year. Not this year. They weren't going to contend and make it a real noise this year, but you had Bridges to that team, a full off season. It's probably the last or second to last year of Fred VanVleet's prime. Bridges is right in his prime. When that guy comes up, we have Bridges under contract for longer. All this young talent. You still have Jabari Smith. You still have a couple picks. Like, that's something you could really build around. And because Jalen Green hadn't lived up to the potential he's shown in the last 12 games, he was a piece that, okay, he may be really good. It may not be here because he's not getting the minutes he needs to fully develop and flourish. We could swap that for Bridges, who we know is a B+ level player right now. So I could see in theory, but right now, the Jalen Green, the way he's playing, they don't do that trade straight up. Like Jalen Green is playing better than Mikal Bridges right now. He's just not a better player than Mikal Bridges.
There's literally nothing to be excited about with the Nets. It's like the most like dormant franchise.
They have no
not a
future. They have no players. There's nothing on the team you enjoy.
And I wish they would have. I wish they would have just kept Udoka. Like Udoka's such a good coach, and just seeing what he did with the Rock. Like obviously, like, even when he coached the Celtics, like they got off to a slow start, and then the second half of the year when he coached the Celtics, they like went on this incredible run in the finals. Like
Yeah,
so, it didn't happen. It didn't happen right away for the Rockets, but they're clicking on all cylinders right now. Jalen Green looks like one of the best 12, 15 players in the NBA, and with Van Vliet and Jabari Smith and Dylan Brooks playing really good, who could have been had by any team. He's got that team buying in, and it's going to be really interesting in the West to see if the Warriors, the Lakers, and the Rockets basically vying for those last three spots.
It's crazy.
It's a crazy race, and to see the Rockets come out of that is
last thing on the Nets, Frank. They're literally in purgatory. It's the worst place to be. And the sad part is they have a couple of young guys you like. Like I think Nick Claxton's a good player. But he's going to get $100 million in free agency.
I don't think
he's not $100 million player. Like
you can't get Nick Claxton. You got to let him walk. If that's the case.
Like Cam Johnson, guy you like to have on your team,
terrible.
But he's not $100 million player. Cam Thomas, nice guy, but he's like, yeah, you want him on your team, but is he a winning player? Like I'm not 100% sure. So all these guys that they have to make roster decisions on, I don't think they're worth as much as they're going to get paid in the Nets situation. If you're another team that needs a guy to come off the bench and score 20, you overpay for Cam Thomas. But the Nets don't need that.
It's hard to believe.
What the hell are they supposed to do to get out of this? They have no path to
Well, I mean, Sean Marks,
relevance.
He got them out of the initial Paul Pierce KG debacle somehow and was able to rebuild the thing from the ground up, which I was amazed by. But now he's completely just reverted back with this team in the exact situation, which is just crazy. It seems like every swing the Nets take in like the history of their franchise ends up biting them in the butt. It's like everything ends up failing, and
it sucks.
It's just the heart. That initial. I listen to Bill Simmons on Monday, just like talking about the. It's so painful because they didn't need Harden. They could have just gotten Durant and kept Jared Allen and kept LeVert and built this up.
Even though they made the trade, the thing that kills you is they were never freaking help. Frank, that 13-game stretch. I remember. No.
Hang on. So what the Nets should have done was for the Harden trade. Yes, we'll make this trade, but for every year he's not here, we get first round picks back, and that would have given them protection in the event that Harden did what he ended up doing.
I don't know if Houston does that though, but like. Even when you had him.
Then you say no. Then you hang up and say no because James Harden can't be trusted. So you hang up and you say no.
Fair. The Jared Allen trade, obviously, like including him over DeAndre is a debacle. Like
it's one of those single worst.
I know it's a terrible move, but like at the end of the day, those three guys together in the 13-game stretch we saw, that was an unstoppable stretch. And had it worked out, it doesn't matter if Karis LeVert and Jared Allen aren't part of the team. The Nets had more than enough firepower. Hell, they almost had enough firepower with just one healthy Durant, an MIA Kyrie, and an injured James Harden. Like, that's how good that team was. And that's why you go, buyer's remorse is real. And the trade has turned out to be a colossal failure because it collapsed in front of our eyes, Frank. But you go all in to get that star power because it puts you in that small circle of teams that could legitimately win a championship. And even without a healthy James Harden, and Kyrie played 2 games that series and missed the rest, they were this close away from the freaking finals, man. And that's what hurts the most because we never got to see the full potential. And even at 70% of the potential, even at 70%, that team was damn near close, good enough to win a title.
I thought about it. The most painful losses of my lifetime: 04 Yankees, 2010 Jets, and 2021 Nets. Those are the 3 most painful losses of my lifetime. And just terrible.
Where were you for the Game 7 for the Nets? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was producing that. We were covering the game, and we were going up right after the game. And I knew that once Durant hit the 3, and then they called it a 2, and I saw the look on Durant's face that it was a 2, and I saw how he reacted. I was like, all right, we lost. Like in that moment, every ounce of excitement just immediately got zapped from my body, and I knew that they weren't going to win. I just knew based on the way Durant reacted to that, them ruling that. And the worst part about it is that Marv Albert on the call, Durant for the lead, yes. And it was like, oh my, and like seeing like the jubilation from the crowd, and like it was like, oh my God, and that's just 1-2. Sorry, you're going to overtime, and the air just completely sucked out. And I hate how everyone just destroys on Barclays. Not that I think Barclays is a great building, but there's literally nothing around Barclays Center. It's like a dormant area. There's nothing, like you go to a game there, you're like, oh, where would we go after? You got to like take the subway back to Midtown. It's like ridiculous, but whatever. I hate hearing about the Nets. I might not watch another Nets game the rest of the rest of the decade. I'm like so out
until they get a legitimate guy to be excited about. There's no point.
Anyway, Caitlin Clark was offered, which I think is a very fascinating story. Ice Cube offered her $5 million to play in the Big Three, and to top that off, she could still play in the WNBA. So it's not like one or the other. And I don't think Caitlin Clark would do this because I don't think she's brought up. If this was like Angel Reese or those Cavalier twins or whatever they're called, I think that they would do that. I don't think Caitlin Clark will play in the Big Three, even though she should, because you can still play in the WNBA. You get $5 million, which is like basically 15 years worth of playing it. So like, it's just crazy, and the amount of opportunities that Caitlin Clark's gonna have when she leaves Iowa. And she's not gonna do it, but she should do it because you're not gonna get that money anywhere else.
I disagree on the fact she should. She should
do
it for the money,
but she will not do it.
She shouldn't do it because it'll end poorly, and it'll give people more reason
to diminish. How do you know it ended poorly?
She could absolutely play in the Big Three, but like the first time she's going up against Katino Mobley and Katino Mobley blocks her, that's the only thing that people are going to talk about for 7 years with her. It's like, oh, yeah.
You view it as like LeBron in the dunk contest. Like if LeBron doesn't do well in the dunk contest, then he'll never hear the end of it.
I see this as like really a no-win situation for other than the financial standpoint of it, which sucks because I would love to see her compete against some of these old washed-up guys. She can handle her own. She's a legitimately phenomenal basketball player, Frank. Phenomenal. But it's going to happen where she's going up against someone who's 6'7". They're going to block her shot, and it's just going to be, oh, yeah, well, she did, but she wasn't really that good. And it never should be a comparison between her and male basketball players. Like, that should not be what she's judged against. And she could go in and dominate the WNBA, and she could bring the WNBA to new heights and new levels and do things that, you know, bring women's basketball to a stage on the professional level that she's done on the college level, which has surpassed men's college basketball. I never thought that would be the case, but it's blatantly obvious the women's game has surpassed the men's game. I just don't see the benefit for her
in terms of ratings.
I think in terms of overall popularity, yeah, the women's game has surpassed the men's game.
So what's better about the women's game is that the players stick around longer, and you're able to build that familiarity with the fan bases. Like when you look at college basketball, women's college basketball, USC, you know about Juju Watkins, you know Caitlin Clark on Iowa, you know Angel Reese on LSU. There's like these, and Paige Becker is on UConn, who's going to be coming back next year. And then in men's game, it's like, I was like talking about Tennessee basketball yesterday. I was like, Dalton Connect, who else? I can't name a single guy. I like
the Kai Ziegler.
It's like, I mean, it's just like the guys keep changing and that's the biggest difference in women's basketball. And it used to be like that in the men's game where you're able to follow the career of JJ Redick, Adam Morrison, you know, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton, Shaq, you know, all.
You don't have to go that far. Jimmer Fredette. Steph Curry played 3 years. Like,
but Steph only had one run in the tournament, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he was. I mean, unless you were a big time college basketball fan, it was really that one coming out party in the tournament. But Adam Morrison, Tyler Hansbrough.
I never heard of Steph Curry before that tournament.
Okay, Tyler Hansbrough.
Yeah, that's what made college basketball great. Like if UConn was able to run it back, I mean, they're so good, but if they were like run it back, and all these teams, you know, where Kentucky could have built a dynasty with, you know, Anthony Davis and Karl-Anthony Towns, and you know.
Let me ask you this: UConn, in a way, ran it back. How many guys on UConn can you name right now?
I mean, Donovan Clingan, Tristan Newton. Yeah, it's hard.
That's my point. That's the national champion last year, the number one team for most of the season this year, the number one overall seed in the tournament, by far the most popular and dominant team left playing, and they ran it back as well as any teams run it back in college basketball in the last decade, and you can name 2, maybe 3 guys on the roster, right? Like it's crazy. It's hard to be invested the same way we used to be. And I don't know
But
the
I mean,
fix.
I believe that the men's games are still, I mean, vastly outrated. It's not like, the women's games are, neck and neck with the men's games rating, wise. The men's games are still, you know, and maybe it'll over the years as these years go on and whatnot, like the gap will start to close a little bit more. But as of now, the men's games are vastly still outrating the women's games. So I don't disagree that the women's game is, more exciting and there's, more faces that we know. But in terms of the popularity and whatnot, I wouldn't go as far as saying they're on the equal playing field yet.
I think TV ratings are misleading, and I think the
Okay.
overall interest in said games, and not just, oh, the tournament's on, let me turn it on. Like, the actual interest in the games is higher on the women's side than it is on the men's.
And the first home run on opening day, not of the season because there were home runs, I believe, in the South Korea series. Mike Trout, the first home run here on opening day, as the Yankees are getting set to face the Astros in about 35 minutes time as we're recording this podcast. I like the Astros to win this game because Nestor Cortez does not have what it takes. But I'm super excited he won Soto and hope that he resigns. But we'll see what happens. But that will do it for this edition of Lucas podcast. We'll be back next week to preview a monster Final Four in men's college basketball. Maybe Caitlin Clark will still be alive too. We'll see.
And the women's in Cleveland. It's happening right here. Peace.